Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all having a great day so far. So today we're actually building a very modern family home in Delta Valley on the 50 by 40 lot, which is kind of like inspired by Cape Cod style mansions and farmhouses. And although we have quite a lot of farmhouses on the channel, I feel like this one's kind of unique as it incorporates certain features such as like its own basketball court and outdoor gym area and its own like designated like butler's area, as well as like a crafting station. And obviously I feel like what really makes or breaks like a farmhouse based on the ones that I've seen online is kind of like how they have that like entrance way with like the cars that go into like their own designated area before they go into the garage, which I thought was kind of cool. So yeah, I wanted to incorporate that into this build as well, and I feel like that is kind of unique because like although we don't have cars in the game, I do like adding realistic features such as that. And as I mentioned a few seconds ago regarding like the crafting station stuff, that's actually kind of like where the garage is. So I obviously didn't want to create like a lot of like empty rooms or spaces in this build, so rather instead of like leaving it empty, I just rather like repurposed it. So although it looks like a garage from the exterior, it actually functions as like a nice like crafting station for your sims, so that you can like, you know, like add some functionality to the game, because obviously like there's a lot of things that you can create within the game. So, and I didn't feel like it was really necessary to put those stations within like the actual build, so having its own like designated area within the lot was kind of like cool. So yeah, I just felt like since I got that opportunity, I was like, might as well just take it and like just utilize it. And I also really like the catwalk feature within this build. So we kind of have like this catwalk that kind of like goes across from like the main home all the way to like its own wing, which is kind of like one of the main bedrooms in the house that we have. And the bottom floor is also accessible and is also functional. So we have like its own like butler's area within that space, which I thought was really nice. And I really wanted to incorporate some like unique features into this build by having like different like rooms and houses in the exterior. Obviously I did take a lot of inspiration with building this build, even inspiration from other games as well, where people have created the same build in other games, which I feel like was kind of cool. And I feel like it's something that I would probably like branch into hopefully in the future, with like creating different challenges and stuff for myself, with like seeing if I'm able to create the same build in like different games and stuff like that. But yeah, let me know if you guys would be interested in incorporating new games onto the channel. But yeah, with this build I kind of wanted to incorporate this like skylight loft sort of situation, because like obviously like with like a lot of these like farmhouses you do get quite a lot of like roofing, and to make them look a bit more interesting I kind of incorporated these like skylight loft room sort of like fake roofs, which aren't really accessible, but I feel like really add to the build and kind of like make it look a lot more interesting. And although it doesn't really come in a lot of colors, I still feel like it looked pretty good, as I did go with like a pretty simple color for the roofing, which is kind of like a nice like light shade of black, which came with the eco lifestyle roofing, which is obviously one of my favorite roofings. But yeah, I feel like it kind of just like turned out pretty well. And obviously even if it did stick out a little bit, I didn't really mind it, as that was kind of like a feature. It was kind of like its purpose, if that makes sense. The house I was actually kind of looking at had this like slanted bit on one side of the house, which was kind of cool. And I was surprised that despite building so many farmhouses, I never actually like utilized creating like a slanted roof style. So yeah, it was kind of cool to like incorporate that into this build. And as you guys can see like from the exterior so far, it is a relatively huge family home. Like it does look like a typical wealthy family home, and I really do like the shape of this home. Like I feel like it's kind of interesting in comparison to like my previous builds, which is kind of like more of like an L shape or like a U shape, you know. Like this is kind of like a bit more complex looking, and I really do like the way homes look when it's like a bit more complex, because it looks a bit more like busy and expensive and extravagant. So yeah, and since that was kind of like the objective with this build, I feel like it kind of looked like pretty good in the end. And I did have to also like skip some of the roofing here and there, obviously because it was taking such a long time. And as you guys can see, like even like throughout the first few minutes of the build, I was actually like adjusting the house quite a lot, because I was trying to make it fit on this 50 by 40 lot, because I didn't want to make it way too big to the point where like it was just inaccessible. And I feel like creating lots on a 50 by 40 or like 50 by 50 is a bit more accessible to a bunch more players in comparison to creating a bunch of 64 by 64 lots. And we've been creating quite a lot of these like huge builds recently, so it was kind of cool to just like go back down to like creating something a bit more simple and like on a smaller lot, just so that it's more accessible and easier to play on, which kind of helps with putting less furniture and like objects into the build, helping it to like run a bit more better and like have greater performance on everyone's PC, so that they can enjoy any build that they want, as we already experienced a lot of issues within the game, such as like bugs and stuff. So the last thing you want is kind of like lag and performance issues in your game. So yeah, I'm just trying my best as possible to create something that looks interesting while keeping it to like a minimal point, if that makes sense, which kind of like resonates with like my style as well, as I do really like a lot of like minimalistic and modern pieces within the game. So yeah, I do really like to keep it down to like the minimum as much as possible. But yeah, right now we kind of have like the outside like floor plan of the backyard so far, which I feel like is like very nice and simple, but also like very sophisticated and fancy looking. And here we're kind of just like looking at the main window pieces that I've chosen for this build, which is kind of like very simple, and I opted for these base game ones because I feel like they work really well with like modern farmhouses, which is kind of the same windows that I use throughout like all of my farmhouses, because I just feel like it works really well with like the wooden paneling on the exteriors and stuff like that. And initially I wasn't really sure if I wanted to use these windows in particular, because I don't know if I really liked them in the beginning for this build in particular, not the other ones. But for this one, I just didn't know if it was working really well or not. But in the end, I did actually like end up going with them, and I was really happy with them because they looked really nice and sophisticated and simple. And I believe these smaller windows are from the horse ranch pack. I'm not 100% sure, but they possibly could be. I did use quite a lot of horse ranch pack in this build, such as like the loft, like skylight, as well as like a few columns and stuff here and there. But yeah, moving on to the basketball court, I didn't want to make it something like very boring and basic black and white color scheme that I usually like doing. So instead, I wanted it to actually kind of like stick out. So I remained with like this like orangey sort of like sandy tarmac sort of color for the flooring, and instead I kind of like went with like a nice white and like navy sort of like color for the actual like basketball court place. And I wanted to initially use like a nice simple fencing around the actual basketball court because I didn't want it to stand out or look too tall. But then I was like, you know what, it doesn't really look that realistic, so instead I opted with like that really tall metal fencing, which was kind of like realistic, to be honest, although it didn't really like look that aesthetic. It was like the most realistic looking one. So yeah, I just instead like opted for a more realistic look, and I only opted for like one basketball net because it was just like looking a bit too much, and like the entrance was on one side of the basketball court, so it was, I felt like it was kind of just like necessary to just like keep one for this entire build, which I didn't really mind, to be honest, as it's not like a really like serious one. It was kind of just like an entertainment sort of place. I just scattered a bunch of nice cypress trees throughout the entire build because I feel like they look very like nice and well kept and sophisticated, which I feel like resonates with like a very nice like modern luxurious build. So I just positioned those like where I typically would like want them. And as I was mentioning a few moments ago, like regarding those flat fencing pieces, I've been using these flat fence pieces a lot in like a lot of my builds recently, and I don't know why, I just feel like it really helps with like making pathways and like bushes and plant areas stand out a lot more, and I really do like the way it looks. And it also covers that like gray outline that you have in certain parts of the build, like when you have like a flat roof or like a foundation. It really does help with like covering that up, and I believe that came with Parenthood or Get Together, I'm not really sure though. And for the front of the home, we kind of like opted for the same style that we have for the backyard. So we have like a lot of foliage as well as like a lot of those cypress trees, and I didn't really want too many different like trees and plants throughout the entire build, so I kind of just like used the same ones throughout, which I feel like looked a lot more like sophisticated and well kept. We do have a lot of terrain paint in this build, which I was kind of worried about because I didn't want it to get like messed up or like destroyed as I was building this build. So I was obviously like saving throughout the build here and there, as well as like saving it onto the gallery locally, so that if I ran into any issues, I would just like re-upload the previous one that I have saved. And I wanted this like nice hedge design that went throughout like the entire like walkway, as well as like the drive-through of the entire build. And we kind of have like this main like entrance way, which is kind of like covered in the hedges, which I really like the design of. And I was actually thinking of placing a fountain in there, but I just felt like it was just a bit too much, so I just kept it very minimal, added some like nice simple lavender plants as well as like cypress trees, and I lowered the hedges down by using the tool mod, which always comes in handy. And for some reason with that specific lot, the floor looks a bit weird, so I did actually go all around the entire lot and place like a very nice like green terrain paint throughout the entire part of the build. And yeah, moving on to the interior, I obviously skipped the floor plan and adding the lights in because it was just taking such a long time. But yeah, we're starting off with the kitchen, which is like a very nice simple white kitchen, which I am using the Home Chef Hustle furniture pieces because I honestly just find it so useful and effective when using this specific kitchen piece, because honestly it just has everything that you really need in a kitchen. The main kitchen piece that I really do enjoy using is the island living one because of the waterfall edges, which I feel like is very nice. And although some parts of this Home Chef Hustle kitchen pieces does have that sort of like waterfall edge feel, it doesn't really like stick out as much and doesn't look as vibrant, whereas like the island living one really does. And I really do like the colors and like the textures on that one. But yeah, I did actually opt in for using the Home Chef Hustle one because it just makes it like a lot more easier, especially when you're utilizing a lot of the clutter pieces that came with Home Chef Hustle. It kind of just like makes sense to use the whole kit as a whole. And we also have like a little butler's kitchen in the corner of the build, which I feel like is kind of like hidden with like the side cabinets and the fridge that is within the cupboards, which I thought like was really nice and interesting. And I try to obviously add color into these builds here and there by using the Home Chef Hustle wallpaper. I just went with like this like nice mint green color, which I was trying to do on the island counters as well, but instead I just opted for mint island seat pieces instead. And we also have a very nice designated like dining area that is situated towards like the front end of the home, which is kind of like in its own area, and it's kind of like cut off by like the spandrels that we see cascading throughout like the entire home, which I feel like really nicely represents a farmhouse, because I feel like a lot of these farmhouses do have a lot of these like natural like exposed wooden spandrel columns that like you can see like throughout like the entire build. And like I was trying to replicate that as much as I could within the Sims, obviously as much as possible, without making it look too busy. And I actually used a lot of pastel pop kit items in this build. Obviously like my favorite seating, but also like a lot of like the wallpapers, as well as like some of like the wall decors as well, which I thought was kind of interesting. They do have quite a lot of like interesting and modern pieces that I really do like using in some of my builds. And I wanted to create a unique living space, so I used this like very nice exposed like rock texture for the wallpaper, as well as like a very nice open fireplace, as well as like utilizing a bunch of different furniture pieces that I don't really use. So if you're an avid viewer of the channel, you would know that I use quite a lot of like modern furniture pieces when building in most of my builds. So the fact that I utilize this parenthood like coffee table, as well as like those island living single seaters, it's kind of like a few unique furniture pieces that I'm incorporating in some of my like newer builds. And obviously I did use that book nook two-seater as usual, because honestly it's just like one of my favorite two-seaters in the game so far, because I don't know, I just find it really modern and it just looks the most realistic to me in my opinion. It does slouch a little bit too much, like the actual like seat part, but I don't really mind it besides that. And I am really happy with how this living room turned out in general, because I just feel like it looked a lot more different than what I usually like doing. And I obviously wanted to add a bit of color into this living room as it was looking a little bit bland, so instead I opted for a base game rug that incorporated some nice colors that I felt like really matched well and nicely with the living room overall, as it matched with like the pillows on the couches and stuff. And I also had other colors within the living room as well, such as like the greenery from the plants and like the yellow and oranges from the other pillows and stuff. But yeah, I just tried to add some more interesting stuff throughout like the entire area of the home, such as like a bookshelf here and there, some like nice pillow baskets and like blankets here and there, just to make it feel a bit more like comfortable and homey, as well as like changing like the light fixtures when necessary, just to make it feel like it's more like on brand and on theme with like the actual room and like this living space. And right now we're just creating the main bathroom for the home on the first floor, and usually I don't really show my bathrooms, but because this was kind of like the main one, I obviously just wanted to keep it in. And we're utilizing the perfect patio counters, which I honestly really like. I don't know why, but I use these all the time when like I want to create something that looks like very fancy and modern. I also use these when I'm trying to create like outdoor grills and stuff, which we will see in a few moments. But yeah, I just feel like it looks really nice and like very modern and simple. So yeah, and I just feel like it works really well in like a bathroom. And we're also decorating hallways and stuff here and there. Obviously that's not how it's going to look in the end, but that's just like me cluttering it up, just so like I remember to go back and like add some extra details here and there. And we also have a very small little room here on the side of the home, which was kind of like feeling a little too small for to be like its own specific room. So I added like a nice little arch and created like a nice little like laundry room, which had like a very nice like baby blue theme, and I incorporated like vacuums and stuff in there just to make it a bit more like accessible and functional overall, as well as like some shelving for like some storage units. But yeah, moving on to the actual like office area, we actually have a office that is in front of the living room, and it has like a very nice simple color scheme of it being like black and white with like a hint of color here and there. And I really like the incorporation of the fireplace, as we do have quite a lot of fireplaces in this build. And as I was mentioning a few moments ago, the perfect patio counters are back and we're using it in like the outdoor grill area. And before we move on to the upstairs, I just wanted to show you guys what the exterior looks like and finishing off the extra exterior furniture pieces that I needed to add. And I believe I did skip quite a few of the rooms that were on the main floor, just mainly because it was just taking such a long time and I didn't want to like bore you guys with creating a million different bedrooms and bathrooms and en-suites. So yeah, we're moving on to the upstairs now, and this is primarily I guess this is kind of like the main master bedroom because I situated it next to the nursery and it has its own ensuite, but obviously you guys can pick whatever room you guys want to classify as the master bedroom, as I don't really mind, to be honest. But yeah, I just felt like it just kind of like made sense as it was next to the nursery, and I was trying to go for like a dark brown and like blue color scheme sort of situation. I'm not sure if I was able to execute properly, but like I do really like the way it turned out in the end because it just looks like something unique, and I obviously tried to add as much color as I can into my bedrooms. Even if I can't incorporate it into my like living rooms and kitchens, I always try to like make sure it is functional and like it looks nice and vibrant within each bedroom, just so like it adds a bit more diversity and it makes the rooms a bit more interesting. So yeah, I just went around and added some like concrete baby blue walls that I believe came with Eco Lifestyle. I don't know, I just really like the way the Eco Lifestyle wall looks. It just looks very nice and very detailed as well. So yeah, that's the main reason why I really went with those wallpapers. And I don't really show this, as I mentioned before, but I do like showing you guys the en-suites of some of the bathrooms, and obviously because that was a master bedroom, I wanted to show you guys the bathroom of that, which is just like a very nice simple one. I use the same bathtub that I usually use. And yeah, we're moving on to the actual nursery area now. This nursery is, as I mentioned, like situated right next to the master bedroom and doesn't really incorporate a lot of unique features, but it's just like one of those generic nurseries that I really like doing, with like the hovering dresser as well as like a nice little book nook area in the corner of the nursery where you can like read books and stuff, and just like adding some like random stuff here and there, like such as like toys and like the mobiles and stuff. And I don't know if this is weird, but I added a mobile in the middle of the room. I feel like it was just such a huge mobile to the point where I was just like, it kind of just looks like a nice like modern art piece. It looks like a I don't know, like I don't know if that's what you guys get as well, but to me it looks like a modern like light fixture or like an art piece. So yeah, I just thought like I could just utilize several objects in like different ways rather than what its like main purposes or is for, which I highly encourage you guys do as well, because it kind of just like allows you guys to use a bunch of different items in different ways that they're not intended to be used for. We also went with like a nice blue color scheme for that nursery as well. And moving on to the other bedroom, which is right down below the catwalk, we have a very nice gold sort of like bedroom. I don't know, I just wanted it to be like a bit more lighter and brighter, because we did go from like a really dark bluish sort of bedroom to like a more lighter one. I just went with like a very nice like yellowish goldish color scheme that I really liked, because I really do like the color yellow in like bedrooms, because it really does pop out and stand out. And I really do like that specific painting or art piece, because I feel like it really does work really well with the colors that I have chosen for this specific bedroom as well. And obviously this room does have its own ensuite as well as like a very nice huge extravagant wardrobe sort of situation. I didn't put a desk in every single room because I just felt like it wasn't really that necessary. And this is also one of the final bedrooms that I'll be showing in this build, because there was honestly like, I believe like 5 or 6 bedrooms in this build, as well as like 3 or 4 like rooms that were to do with like gyms and crafting area and butler's room and stuff like that. So those I felt like weren't that necessary to show, but I would highly encourage you guys to like download the build so you guys can check it out in the game for yourselves. And we also have a very nice like little book nook kit within this bedroom. And I actually had to change the fireplace and the TV in this room because I just felt like it wasn't really working very well, as this is one of the smallest bedrooms in the entire house. And I just felt like, although it would have been nice to have that sort of like entertainment within this build or in this room in particular, I just really needed to add like the functionality such as like the wardrobe and stuff like that. So yeah, I just went with that nice color scheme as well in that room as well, with like a very nice like bluish pinkish sort of color scheme. And it was very detailed as well, a lot of like textures and a lot of like flowery detailing on the flooring as well as on the bed, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I used a bed that I don't really use, which adds to the uniqueness of the build. And as you guys just saw, I was just creating the final ensuite for that bedroom, which is nothing too special, but it just incorporates some of the nice colors that we see throughout the entire bedroom, such as like the bright yellows and blues. So yeah, I just wanted to incorporate some of those colors into this small little bathroom as well. room, and we are going off into the hallway of like the main landing area once you go up the stairs, which I honestly thought was like very bland and it didn't look that interesting. So instead I added like a nice little seating area here, utilizing like my favorite furniture pieces such as the nice couch and like the luxe seat. And I just went around the entire home and I pretty much just like added curtains and extra details here and there. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this build. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'd love to know your suggestions and thoughts. If you guys liked the video, make sure to consider liking and subscribing. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video.